Hello all, welcome to trainings.com. In this Oracle database programming session, we'll discuss about SQL Loader, and this is the first session on the SQL Loader, so we call it as SQL Loader Foundation session. Let us get into the objective. So in this lesson, we'll be trying to understand about what is SQL Loader and what are the list of files we have to consider when you're designing a SQL Loader, and what are the list of log files or bad files which it generates, and the different types of data formats, and the two samples, one for uh, a d- a fixed length format, and another one is for the variable length file format. Let us get into the SQL Loader. So let us try to understand what is SQL Loader from this particular visual diagram. First thing is a SQL Loader is an executable file which comes with a database. Okay, what it is? It is a executable file which comes with the Oracle database. And what is the purpose of it? Here, if you observe what it is taking, there are two inputs to the SQL Loader. One is controller file, and the file extension is CTL. It's called control file, loader control file. We call it as CTL file. And another one is input data file. Okay, it's a text file. It can be with a different format. It can be .text, CSV, it can be .dat, or even XML format. Okay, so it supports various set of formats. Another thing is, so what is in the control file, will define the information about what is the data file it has to consider, from which location it has to consider, as well as into which table you need to load the data. So what is a SQL loader? It is executable file which comes with the database. It requires two input files. One is control file, other one is data file. It loads the data from the file into the table. What it does, it loads the data from the file into the table. Here, if you observe, once it receives two input files, it can generate these number of things. The first priority thing is the table, nothing but loading the data into the table. Other one is it generates a log file about what is the execution of it, whether it loaded or not loaded, how many records it parts, what are the set of who executed what, which location. This log file will have all the information. And there one is a bad file, right? The set of records which got it rejected, as well as the set of discard files, it will have the information. Okay, so this is a high level information of the SQL loader. And here, like, this is the theoretical information, similar thing. Like, so data file, nothing but the source data. Control file, which will have the set of SQL loader commands, which mentions what are the list of columns and to which table you have to load the data. What are the conditions you have to consider? If any default value, if any formatting functionality, if at all, if you want to call any PL SQL function, you can mention that. All those things you can mention in the control file. And when a control file is executed, it can generate three files. One is called log file, bad file, or reject file, or discard file. So these are the list of files it will generate. So what is a log file? Log files, it will have information about, like, what is the data file it considered, how many records it rejected, how many records it passed. Some sort of logging information it will have it. Other one is a reject file, bad file. We can also call it as reject file. It gives the records that were rejected because of the formatting errors, or because when they caused Oracle errors. So it may occur, like, let us say you have provided data file and in which the date format is wrong. So obviously the record cannot be loaded, it will get rejected. And this bad file will have a set of records which are rejected. And the last one is discard file. So discard file comes into picture when you mention any filtering criteria, nothing but the when clause in the control file. So this discard file will have the information about the list of records which it failed because of the when condition you mentioned in the control file. Okay, now getting next slide. And yeah, so as of now, we just got the high level information about the list of files you will be coming across when you're designing a SQL loader. Now the major important thing is a data file, right? So the source system sends the data. You need to load the data from your file into the table. So when you want to design your control file, you have to have a clarity on how your data is, like that, how your data is designed, so that you can design your control file similarly. Nothing but the source system, whenever the source system is sending the data, your control file need to understand it. Nothing but you have to understand how the format of the data, then based on that you can design the control file. So now let us get the deep dive understanding on the data file. So data file, the first thing is the format, nothing but the file format. Is it a CSV format? Is it it's a .dat format, or XML format, or a JSON format? What are the format it is? You have to understand the format of your source system file. And the next thing is whether it's a fixed length file or a variable length file. and the data type of each and every column. Let us say like mostly in many of the system the date format will be different, so you have to make sure that you need to understand the format and load the data accordingly. And what is a periodicity, what is the frequency you will be receiving a source file. Let us say it is for every minute or every hour or every week, every month or bi-weekly or 1 yearly. So this information should be provided by the source system so that you can design your the batch job appropriately, and in which particular location your source file will be your source file will be there, nothing but the data file, and into which table you want to load the data. So these all high level information you need to have it before you design the control file. Next one. So let us see the sample how the fixed length look like. See, the basic thing is the data file. When you say fixed length, it nothing but every column will have a fixed length, nothing but employee number is always 5 characters, employee name is always 15 characters, date is always 10 characters, or salary is always 5 digit, or job is always 10 digit. Your source system says that my data file is in this format, every column will be of fixed length, you need to design your logic accordingly. Okay, so this is one of the sample data file of the fixed length. Now coming to the other one, variable length format. So in the variable length format, what exactly it will happen is they will not mention what is the length of each and every column, but what they mention is that each and every column will be separated by a delimiter. It can be a asterisk, or it can be comma, it can be piping symbol, it can be dollar symbol. It depends upon the source system as well as the target system conversation. They have to come up with a information you place the file like this, I will read it accordingly, like that. They have to have a communication understanding between source as well as target. So in this example here, if you observe, each and every column got separated by piping symbol. Okay, now next one. Yeah, and next one is like, as of now we just saw two samples of data file. Let us see how we need to write our control file so that we can read the data, right? So in the control file, so it is not your exact SQL or PL SQL commands. There are some set of commands which are similar to the normal SQL, but here if you observe, the first set of command in the control file you have to mention is load data. That's a keyword you have to start with, load data, followed by in file. Then you have to mention the location of the file. We have to mention the location of the file. Then we have to mention what is the type of loading you want to consider, insert or append or replace or truncate. Then into which table you want to load the data, and then you have to mention whether it's a fixed length or if it is a delimiter based. If it is a delimiter based, you have to mention like how the values are terminated by. And then you can also mention the double quotes if at all. If you are like in some source system, what they do is they always enclose the data in double quotes, but while loading you don't want to consider the double quotes, you can mention that. And the trailing null columns, you can mention that if there are some set of columns for which you don't have the value. Okay, now so let us see the simple example of a control file. Okay, for which particular file? It is for the variable length file. So here if you observe, now what I want to do is I want to load the data into the EMP table. Okay, I want to load the data into the EMP table. And how do I design the SQL Loader sample? So what all you require? The first one is your data file. Once you are aware of the what is the data file location, what is the format of your data, and what are the columns and what are the data types. Once you're aware of this information, you can design the control file. Now on the left side here, if you observe, this is my control file, and the right side top, it is in my data file. Okay. Okay. Now, what I've done is I have designed these two files and placed those particular files in my application server, nothing but database application server. And the location I mentioned is home, Apple Manager, data files. Okay. If you don't have any application server, obviously you can mention those files anywhere, wherever your database is having access. I'm talking about if you have installed your database in your local system, just mention the files in any of the location. And then after that, what you can do is go to your command prompt and then execute a command called SQLLDR. First of all, try to see whether you in your system whether you have the SQL Loader availability or not. So now I'll just go to command prompt of my Unix box. I'll just type SQLLDR. When you type SQLLDR, if you just got something like mention the command or something like that, it means that your particular SQL Loader is available. But if it says not command not found, it means that you don't have the SQL Loader installed. Nothing but that particular exe file is not available, so you cannot use this particular functionality. Okay. Now let us get back to our sample. So I'll just open my sample first of all, how my data is looking like. So I'll just open my CSV sample. So what you do is whenever you have a CSV sample, better don't try to open with Excel worksheet. Better open with any of the notepad editor or maybe any of the text editor. so that you'll not miss these commas, or you'll not what happens is in Excel, these date formats will be auto converted. That's very dangerous thing. Okay, better always open this particular CSV files in the notepad first. Notepad plus plus is the best option, I can say. And other one is my control file. So this is my control file, emp CSV loader control file. Just open with notepad this also. Now here what I mentioned is the first line I mentioned options, skip is equal to 1. What is the purpose of this one? Skip is equal to 1 is nothing but, see, in my source system, I'm expecting that the first line will have a column information and the data, actual data starts from the second line. That's why I mentioned skip is equal to 1. And the next one is load data. This is a mandatory keyword you have to follow. Then in file, single quotes, you have to mention the location of your data file and then append into table. Nothing but, it's kind of insert a new record. Okay, append into table you have to mention, and the fields are terminated by comma. Nothing but like what happens is, the first of all SQL Loader will skip the first line and then it will try to read one by one line. In each line, I'm telling that my columns are separated by comma, so that you map those particular columns accordingly. Like first column is emp number, e name, like that you have to mention that. And after that, if at all, if you have a date consideration, mention what is the source format, because my database here, if you observe one example. So before executing this one or discussing further, let me open. Now if I just mention my date format is this one, right? Now here, let us say, now in this one, source system is also sending like this, and but it is not telling the time. So but you always need to mention how your data is available in your source system. Date followed by mention how the data is available in your source system, so that while inserting the date, it will convert accordingly. Okay, then mention the remaining set of columns. Once the control file is available, then what you can do is, so I'll just copy this location. So now I'll go to my server, Unix server. Better I'll just, okay, yeah. One is CSV file, right? So better what I'll do is I'll just remove all this here from here. CSV loader and this one. And when you're moving the files from your local system to Unix box, better always select them in a text format. Okay. Now the data is available here. And as of now, here, if you observe how many files are there are only two files. One is CTL file, other one is CSV file. Okay. Now go to your command prompt. Now just check out the current working directory. So go to the data files location. This is my current location, present working directory, PWD, present working directory. Now just type SQLLDR, user ID is equal to username, password, control is equal to emp CSV loader. Okay, emp CSV loader.ctl. Okay, this is how we have to execute the control file. Now once it executes, you may get information like if it is error, or it says like commit point reach logical record count 1, because there is only one record in the file. Refresh here and see how many records it generated. It generated two more files. One is log file, other one is bad file. Okay, so just see the log file, click on edit. Now it says that check user, and like here, if you observe, it got fired. It just triggered it just fired a trigger. So I'll just try to remove this trigger because this is not much relevant in our case, and it says not loaded due to error. Okay, what I'll do is I'm just getting this unnecessary exception, right? I'm not sure why it raised, because there could be some logic on this particular emp table for that trigger. I'll just say drop trigger, or else you can just try, alter trigger disable. Okay, trigger got disabled. Okay, now what I can do is, so now I'll just rm star log. What is other file? Rm star bat, right? So how many files are there now? Two files. I'll try to re-execute the control file and just see now again how many files it will generate. Control R. Again, it generated two files, but see the log first always. Don't come into conclusion. Always see the log files. One row not loaded due to errors, but what is the reason? Record one rejected because of the unique key constraint. Okay, so you'll get the information like this for each and every record. Just see the data file. Now the issue is in the data file, right? Want to go to your data file and see what is the data you have it. So this 100, right? The employee number king 100. Just see whether you already have a record with that number. Okay, I already have a record with the name like employee number 100. So what I'll do is I'll change the data now. Okay, if it's a real system issue, you have to mention to the source system that like you already have a record with this particular record. Better you mention a new record. You have to mention to the source system like this. Now let us say I'll just mention multiple records this time. 104, 105. Okay. Now I change the data. Then what you have to do to re-execute? Copy the data file from your source system. Copy this F5. Copy in text format. Now re-execute. You preferably remove the log file so that you'll understand whether the issue is with your latest information or not. Okay. Yep. Now it says commit point reach 2, 3 like this. Yeah. Can you see now? There is no bad file generator because there are no rejected records I have. Now just edit it. Now can you see? It says 3 rows successfully loaded. Total logical records skipped 1. Total logical records read 3. Okay. Now 3 records loaded and just try to read the data by executing this query. And can you see the latest records? King 345. Okay. So this is how the SQL loader for the variable length functionality. Okay. Now let's see the other sample. The other sample is for the fixed length. Okay. So let us see the fixed length. Execution is same. Like I'll just open my fixed length sample. So I'll just close these two things. So in the fixed length, what I have is I just have an extension with .dat. See, extension of the data file doesn't matter. Okay. It just with the convention you have to design. Another one is my fixed length control file. Yeah. So in the fixed length control file, mention my data file name is this one. And here I mention append into table. Then I mention here, if you observe carefully, for each particular column, I mention the position. Okay. Now here, if you observe in the EMP number should be always 4-digit. It can be less. It can be less. The empty is not considered for loading. Empty is not considered for loading. At max, it has to be 4-digit. Okay. Till 4-digit, it will read it and it will consider it as an EMP number and load it accordingly. And the EMP name similarly 5 to 14, nothing but 10 characters, similarly for the job and so on. And for date format, again, always carefully understand that, mention the format accordingly, else it will not work. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll just mention the appropriate data file because we already loaded some set of data, right? So this time I'll just mention 1006 for my king, 1000 king. Okay. Make sure that you don't disturb the format of your particular data. And also I also already mentioned option skip is equal to 1. Let us say if you don't have the first record to be skipped, what you can do is just remove the option skip keyword first line and also remove the column information from the data file. That's it. Now move the files from your local system to server. What are the two files? Yeah, EMP data CSV, EMP data, sorry, not this one. Okay, as I have not changed, that is why this sorting is not working. But anyway, so one is fixed length CTL, other one is date file, DAT file. F5 text copy. Now go to the command prompt, remove the log file. It will overwrite, but I'm just removing it. Okay. User ID is equal to app/apps, username / password, control is equal to emp fixed length .ctl. Okay. Now just refresh. Yep. Okay. It says one bad file. Just see. It says some issue, and just see what is the issue. Okay. Actual length 10, maximum 9. So it says that like EMP job, whatever I mentioned is not correct. Nothing but actual is 10, but it should be maximum 9. Okay, why it is that? Like, just see that. Okay, it says 9, but I mentioned 10, it says. Okay, from 15% I'm reading it, right? So just see here, this is very important. 15, right? This is 15. This 16, right? So somewhere, like this got disturbed. Save it. Now just try to reload again. Move your data file. emp date text. Okay. Now just refresh. Read the log file. Yeah. Now this time it says 1957 dot stuff. And here, if you observe, I'm not sure bad file got regenerated or not. Just see the log file first. You see, now one row successfully loaded. What happened to your bad file? Bad file is an old the bad file which is there. It's of your old SQL Loader execution, not the current execution. That is why always better to remove all the log information or bad file whenever you try to re-execute. Okay. Now just see this. Can you see? This got loaded properly. And of course, here if you observe, this empty got loaded. So nothing but like while I was changing this particular value for the EMB number, something got disturbed. And here, if you observe, like the king name was loaded improperly, right? Extra space, nothing but the right side space is ignored, but left side space is considered. Okay, we have to be very careful in this particular issue. Okay, but yeah, these are all the learnings. Like from the mistakes only we learn sometimes in a very perfect manner. So these are some of the samples of loading working with a SQL Loader. As of now, we just consider only two samples. One is a fixed length, another one is a variable length. Okay, so as of now we have just seen how to execute a SQL loader for the purpose of fixed length and variable length, and in the next session we'll discuss more on the different set of samples in the SQL loader. Thank you.